Longtime friend Cabot Barden joins us this morning, and of course Cabot, no stranger to many of you. He's an author and has been writing books for a number of years, and we're going to get to that in just a couple of moments. Cabot, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you with us today, and tell us a little bit about what's going on with Cabot Barden right now.
Well, newest book just came out 2 months ago, Fortress of Corruption, the second in the Train from Tombstone series, and I've started working on the third one with this series. This one takes place in Talladega County. A lot of action in this book. It takes place in 1910, so it's a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And the villain in it is a corrupt sheriff. And
imagine that.
Yeah. Who had been arrested and put in prison and escaped. He comes back up here to Talladega County to hide out in his home county, and the trouble is, the house he picks out to hide in is haunted. So he has all kinds of problems trying to get his corrupted empire back together again.
Now, this is a second sequel?
Yeah, this is the second book in the series. The first one was called Saddle Up. John T. Wayne and I talked about that first book. Of course, he's one of the characters in the book. I asked him about using him as a character, and he said that's fine. So
now explain how you two got together.
Well, I was doing a book signing at the DeSoto Caverns over in Childersburg, and one of the vendors was the guy that was coordinating all the vendors, and he asked me, he said, "Would you like to do a book signing with John T. Wayne?" I said, "Who?" He said, "John T. Wayne, John Wayne's grandson." "Yeah, sure." So we did our first book signing in Nakalula Falls about 2 months later. And he and I hit it off, and we've been doing book signings together a lot.
Well, there's one thing for sure, you can tell he's of Wayne blood, can't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You can't miss it, this fella right here.
So, how many books have you written now?
This is number 10, and I'm working on number 11. And, of course, John and I are working on a book ourselves. Be my number 12, called Cowboys and Indians. Mm-hmm. He's writing about the cowboys, which he writes Westerns. And I'm writing about the Indians.
And you kind of study Indian culture and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it runs in the blood. My grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee, mm-hmm. So I'm 1/4, and now I belong to the Cherokee Nation up in Gunnersville, the Cherokee tribe up there.
What goes into your writing?
A lot of research. I do a lot of research because I love history. And I'll take historical facts and I'll work them into my stories. I got inspired by my good friend Clive Cussler. That's the way he does his books. He always starts them out with something that happened a long time ago. Like the book Raise the Titanic, it starts out with the sinking of the Titanic, and of course they come back and mm-hmm. raise it. And but I got inspired from him.
Now, you made the trek to Nashville.
Oh, yeah. Up there 5 years.
Talk about that.
Well, my ex-wife and I moved up there in 95, I believe it was. She wanted to get into the music business. She'd already cut a country album and on an independent label. And we worked up there at Opryland. And she eventually had the shot at it with MCA Records. We had a guy named Earl Neal who was producing us. He's a sound engineer now for Toby Keith.
Wow. So
he's been around the block. And we were that close, and then we found out she was expecting and said, "We're not taking that baby on the road. There's no life for a family." So we ended up coming back to Birmingham, but I think the Lord was dealing with us at that time because we ended up in a Christian band. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of revivals, and so I think the Lord was moving with us.
How did Nashville impact you?
It was a good experience. It was a lot of negativity because you can hardly get in the door up there. So many people, like Lathan Hudson told me, first time I went up there back years ago, when you'd pull up in the gas station and somebody pump your gas for you, he told me, he said, if you pull up the gas station in Nashville and the fellow pumping your gas can outpick you on a guitar, or you can outpick him, you've done something.
If he can outpick you, you need to go home.
Yeah, exactly.
Cabot Barden, our guest this morning here on Daybreak. He is an author, and this is his 10th book, and Fortress of Corruption.
Yep.
How did you come up with that theme?
Well,
I mean, how did you come with a title? What goes into selecting a title for a book?
I usually don't come up with a title till I'm almost through writing the book. I go through it and I think, well, you know, what's going on and what does it refer to? But this one's pretty easy because the villain in the book, he builds a fortress around his house to keep people from knowing what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he runs the bootleggers, and he's got a bunch of other ill stuff going on. And so the local sheriff, he's having trouble getting to him because he has a fortress of corruption around him. So they call in the U.S. Marshals, and the U.S. Marshals help save the day.
So you got a lot of book signings scheduled for the spring and summer. Where are you going to be close by real soon?
Friday, I'll be at Elmo's in Talladega on the square, 2 doors down from Ritz Theater, from 6 to 8. Be doing a book signing there. April in Talladega, the 14th of April, I'll be there on the square doing a book signing there from 3:30 to who knows when.
But you ever thought you'd advance this far?
Not really. I just thought, well, the first book I wrote was just memories when I played in the band with Frank Lister and Charlie Gamble.
Well,
and,
that's two legends right there.
Oh yeah, 2 renegades.
Yeah.
And I just wrote it down, and then I got thinking, well, why don't I just write a book? So I did. And I changed the names to protect me, because, you know, you never know if somebody could come back. I had a lot of my buddies, after I wrote the book, they came back and said, oh, man, that's not true. That didn't happen. Well, no, it's fiction.
Fiction.
Yeah. It's just a fictitious story made up based on stuff that happened.
How'd you hook up with Frank and Charlie?
I've known Frank since we were 11 years old. Frank's dad and mine died at the same time when we were 11. And he and I were in art class together at Pinecrest in 7th grade. And we hit it off as good friends then. And then we put a little band together when we were about 17 or 18 and been going that way ever since, you know, up till he died about 3 years ago.
Yeah, old Charlie, he was an old rocker, wasn't he?
Yeah, Charlie was a mess.
Yeah, I remember Charlie, he could work on a drum now.
Oh yeah.
And we were in church together, and you know, we'd get going, and he'd get that old rock voice of his cranked up, you know. And so, anyway, Cabot Barden, our guest this morning, and Fortress of Corruption. Where can you get the book?
Yeah, Amazon.com, e-Kindle, Barnes & Noble, you can order it, and Books A Million, you can order it.
So, do you dream about some of these things? Do visions come to you, or how do you write down your notes and that kind of thing?
Well, actually, the first book, Saddle Up, came from a dream I had about a couple that are on a train, and the train gets robbed up in North Alabama. And I thought, wow, that's a good story. So I sat down and started working with it, and next thing I know, I got Saddle Up was written. So, and then I asked John if I could use him in the book, and so John T. Wayne's in the books, in this one and Saddle Up, and he's going to be in the next one, which is called Field of Bones.
Mm-hmm. When your original book, you just really wrote memories.
Yep. Just stuff that, 1986 I started writing it, just jotting down memories of me and Frank and Charlie playing together. I had met Clive Cussler, who's written over 50 #1 bestsellers. And I asked him one day, I said, if I ever wrote a book, what would I write about? He said, write what you know, which I knew music, so that's what I wrote about.
Yeah. Talk about your music a little bit too.
Well, right now the only thing I'm doing as far as music goes is we're playing the Square Cup in Talladega on second Thursday of every month from 6 to 8, and playing Batter Up in Childersburg the fourth Thursday of every month from 6 to 8. And we're kind of rotating out on those 2 Thursdays. We'll have 3 of our guys in one place, 3 in the other, from the Nashville Songwriters local chapter.
Hey, this is a second sequel.
Yep.
Have you already started on the third?
Yep. Field of Bones is the next one. It takes place in Oklahoma and Arkansas. A totally different place. So far the story revolves around a kidnapping. A U.S. senator gets kidnapped, but things go awry with that. The kidnappers end up being picked off, and somebody else kidnaps the senator, takes him off in another direction. And so they're trying to find him. So the U.S. Marshals are called in since it's across the state line.
Are these books so-called easy read books?
Pretty much. I make it where if a 12-year-old, 13-year-old want to read it, they won't get embarrassed because there's no filthy language in my books. I don't get gory, don't get graphic because I don't believe in that. I got grandkids, and I won't. If my grandkids pick up the book, I don't want to embarrass them. So I write just good adventure stories.
How long does it normally take, start to finish writing?
My first book started in '86, didn't finish it till 2009. But then after that, now it's got where it's 6 months for a book. Of course, it's about like 300 pages.
You're always looking for material?
It finds me. I don't even have to look for it anymore. It comes hunting me, like the story of Chinobi, who saved Fort Leslie during the Creek Indian Wars. I'd finished up my 5th book about my grandfather, and somebody came to me and said, "Why don't you write a book about the Indians here in Talladega?" I said, "Okay." So I started doing research and found out some wild stuff about that took place.
Talk about just a moment about we have a lot of Indian heritage in just in Talladega County. What was something that jumped out at you? You say, "Wow, I didn't know that."
Well, one of the craziest things I found out was about Chinobi, my main character in my 6th book, I War No More. He was Talladega County's first fatal DUI, or RUI. He was riding a horse, drunk, leaning off his horse. He and Jim Pfeiffer racing back to his house from Martinsville, which was the county seat back then, and hit a tree with his head and killed him. He went through the whole Creek Indian War without a scratch, and then in 1835, drunk, hit a tree, and that was it.
What do they call it? DHI?
Or RUI, riding under the influence.
Cabot Barden, our guest this morning. Tell us again how they can get the books and where you're going to be real soon.
Okay, Amazon.com, eKindle. The museum here has my books too. Elmo's on the Square in Talladega has them. That's where I'll be Friday at Elmo's from 6 to 8. I'll also be April 14th at Talladega Square for the April in Talladega festivities.
You have a website or anything?
CabotBardenAuthor.com. And July 20th, John T. Wayne will be here in Sylacauga at the museum doing a book signing. So
You'll be there too, I guess.
Oh yeah, I'll be there. Right. And Saturday we're going to shoot a mini movie over at Calera at the old train depot over there. They're going to have some guys robbing a train. He and I'll be the U.S. Marshals that save the day.
I'll be the good guys.
Yeah.
All right, Cabot Barden, our guest this morning. Fortress of Corruption, that's book number 10, and make sure you grab a copy of it and look forward to the 3rd sequel of it, too, coming up real soon. Cabot, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
We got more Daybreak coming up right after this time out.